Welcome to the Warning Track Power Hour. I'm Dr. Andrew Scaff. He is Dr. Michael Warman, Esquire. On today's show, we'll get into the NFL's recap for week 4 and we'll preview week 5. We'll talk about our disastrous betting season that we've been having for our personal competition here. And we'll talk about the Kansas City Royals and then the Major League Baseball playoffs. We'll actually start today instead of with football with some baseball news because we haven't been talking. Usually don't care that much about baseball at this point because the Royals are usually out. But now, for us, this is maybe more interesting for us right now than in typical seasons. So before we get to the playoffs themselves, Mike, leading up to the playoffs in the last week of the season, there were some like absolutely crazy things happening in Major League Baseball. What were you more impressed with at the end of this year? Is it the Shohei Ohtani creating the 50-50 club in absurd fashion with a 6-hit, 3 home run, 2 stolen base game to cross the 50 mark on both categories for 50 home runs and stolen bases in the same game? Or is it something even more like bizarre, like the San Diego Padres clinching a playoff spot with a triple play in the ninth inning of a game against the Dodgers? What of those two things, what do you think was more unexpected and more like interesting, I guess, to you?
Triple plays are interesting, I guess, but they're just kind of I don't know. They're
Too
they're
random.
they're random, and then it's like you don't have to really do anything usually. It's spectacular to get them. It just happens to be like, oh, you're standing on third base and the ball gets hit to you, and then you can throw to second and throw to first easily. Or
Well,
like
that
there's
is what happened. But what if the announcer said a triple play would be great right here, and then that happened? Because that is what happened in this game.
well, I guess you would say that most time. I don't know. They probably say that quite a bit. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, sure would be nice if they hit a home run here, and then they hit a home run. Or, like I think the Otani, because it was actually a feat rather than just sort of a you know factoid kind of happening,
Yes.
was more impressive because it was an individual accomplishment that hadn't been achieved by anyone in baseball history,
Right.
and he ends up going 54 home runs and 59 stolen bases. He had a tear of stolen bases in the last few games. So
Yeah.
in that 6-hit game with 10 RBIs, that's probably one of the greatest individual games I'm sure ever. And this was the one season that Otani wasn't pitching because of his uh, Tommy John surgery. He had Tommy John surgery. He had some sort of he had
Right.
issues. And I don't know if he's going to pitch. The question is, well, maybe he shouldn't. Maybe he's a little like Babe Ruth. He was a good pitcher, but maybe he's more valuable as a hitter. And maybe he shouldn't spend his time pitching next year. But he's a really good. He's a Cy Young level pitcher too. So he might. I think next year he might even be even more exciting if he is back on the mound. But I so that was more impressive to me was Otani, and also his run, like near run to the Triple Crown in the National League, where he finished second in the batting title, to Luis Arias. But how yeah, what about you, Andrew? Are you a triple play nut, or were you more impressed by Otani and his performance?
I mean, the triple plays are rare, but to like, you know, clinch a playoff spot on a triple play seems pretty insane. But I mean, it's still, I mean, nobody's done 50-50 ever. So that's, something that's has to be a unique thing. But doing
Good,
it in such a
yeah.
ridiculous game is
Mhm.
amazing. Like, I mean,
Yeah,
3 home run, 2 stolen base games are strange, incredibly rare anyway. But also having 3 other hits, and he
yeah,
could have he could have possibly had a cycle in there because he had 2 doubles in that. So like that would have been maybe if he had the cycle, that might have been like the most impressive game in the history of baseball on its own. And then it set this new club that hadn't existed before. But yeah, I guess it's something like the av like a players that hit 50 home runs, like the average number of stolen bases for those players is somewhere around like seven.
Yeah.
And I think it's about the same the other way for like players that have 50 steals. The typical number of home runs is somewhere in the single digits also. So it's not like, the rarity of those two things together is,
Yeah.
it's just basically Ohtani right now, right? So that's the
Yeah.
reason
Other
to
than
bet on it.
Ricky
But
Henderson had some maybe 30 home run seasons when he had 80 stolen bases or something like that. He had some pop at the end of his uh
yeah.
or toward during his career. I'm gonna look up Ricky Henderson, see what his highest. I wonder if that's um
Because he had 100, didn't he? Did have 100 stolen base season, didn't he?
Henderson, I think he had the record. I think he got 120 one year.
Yeah.
Um, he had 130. He had 130 in 1982, 130 stolen bases.
Yes.
Um, Henderson never hit more. I guess he never hit more than 28 home runs.
But
So
what was the most home runs he had in the 100 plus season, 100 plus stolen base seasons?
he had 10 when he had 130. He had 28 home runs when he had 87 stolen bases.
Like Bond's 73 home run season, he had 13 steals. And that was his only season of more than
Mhm.
50 home runs.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if anybody like Willie Mays maybe had some big seasons with stolen bases and um, steals. Willie Mays, I guess he was almost he had he didn't steal very many bases later in his career. He had a 36 and 40 season. So I guess yeah, he when he hit 51 home runs one year, he had 24 stolen bases.
And later in his career, look, he had 52 home run season where he had nine steals. So
Yeah.
those are, yeah. I mean, usually you do one of the things well, run
Mhm.
or mash, but not
Yeah.
both typically. So
Not
that's,
over 50 at least. Yeah, because like was it Jose
yeah.
Canseco had the 40-40 season. Is he the worst member of the 40-40 club in terms of
I mean, he
success?
actually did it though. It's not, I
Yeah.
mean, we tend to not like people like him anyway, but because he was kind of a jerk too, and involved in, all the drug use and everything too. So,
Yeah, let's see the
but he still has
40-40.
the most memorable play probably in baseball history, though. Of
Yeah, the home run off the head. Is that what you're talking about?
course, yeah.
Yeah.
It
Jose Can
has to be
so
like the
it's
most replayed clip.
yeah. So it's Jose Can well, Ronald Acuna in 2023 had 41 home runs and 73 steals.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and that was just recently too. So that
yeah,
was
last year. Um so the so can you so okay, so we've mentioned Acuna, Otani, Bonds, and
Alex Rodriguez is a 40-40, wasn't he?
Alex Rodriguez. I was gonna say that, and there's one more that you probably won't remember.
Hmm.
2006. You probably think of him as a Yankee or a Cub, but this was with the Nationals.
Oh, so is it Soriano?
Soriano, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, because I never really remembered him as being that big of a home run hitter though, too. But he did have quite a few, like pretty big seasons.
Yeah. He let's see, Soriano. He hit 412 home runs in his career.
Yeah.
He was uh
Because he didn't look like a home run hitter.
no,
Because
he was
it's
a skinny
pretty
guy, but he had a lot of torque
yes. Yeah.
on his point because the way he swung his hips around. He had 39, 38, 28, 36, 46, 33, 29. So he had for several years there, he had, at least 28, 29 home runs for several years in a row. He's
Yeah.
one of those guys that you might say, is he a borderline Hall of Famer? It turns out like later in his career, he wasn't like he fell off a cliff.
Yeah.
it seemed like, in terms of a lot of his stolen bases numbers and stuff like that. He just stopped stealing bases. Um, but yeah, he hit and he didn't hit for a very high average either. So I guess he didn't walk very much. So he was only 112 lifetime OPS plus. So
He didn't get a World Series win either. He was on the Yankees and Cubs in years they didn't end up winning.
didn't the Yankees win in 2000?
Yeah, but he wasn't on that team.
He played
He was
22
like
games for him. But I
he didn't
guess
play in the he didn't play in the postseason though, I
it
guess.
was a
So
September call-up, I guess, or something.
uh, he played in 2001 when they lost to the Diamondbacks.
Hmm.
And he played in 2003 when they lost to the Marlins.
Yeah.
They did Florida Marlins, not the Miami Marlins.
Yes. I forgot he played for the Rangers. He played only 1 year for the Nationals, and that was his 40-40 year.
Oh, wow.
Anyway, yeah. Um, should we move on instead of talking about these odd stat factoids to talk about the Royals and their maybe unlikely trip to the postseason, where they had two 7-game losing streaks in the last month. Although they stayed in alive, unlike the Minnesota Twins, who had an even worse finish to the season, who fell out of the wild card race and allowed the Tigers to sneak in. But somehow the Tigers ended up losing their two of three to the White Sox,
To the to
to
the
help
to the worst team in baseball history, Mike.
the worst team in baseball history, to help the Royals get to that second wild card spot, so they would play the number one wild card team, which was the Baltimore Orioles, instead of having to go to Houston. And Houston seems to have the Royals number this season, at least later in the season they did. Um, so the Royals swept Houston when Houston was really bad early in the season, but then Houston swept the Royals. So the Royals ended up going to Baltimore and actually winning 1-0 against the Orioles in Camden Yards earlier today, Tuesday. So they have a 1-game lead in the 3-game wild card series. So is that were you surprised about the results today, or were you surprised about the results where the Royals were able to get into the second wild card spot, despite horrible play the last uh, few weeks of the season?
I was surprised by both of them. Are you asking me which one is more surprising, or just
I don't
am I
know.
surprised?
Are you surprised?
Yeah, I'm
Or I guess
surprised.
I guess we could also add the surprising return of Vinny Pasquantino.
Yeah, I thought they would fall out of contention and not make the playoffs, and going into even the last week of the season was what my expectation was. So everything after that is going to be a happy surprise, basically. So I mean, I really like the team. I don't think that they make the best decisions all the time, but I want them to succeed. So, but I also don't expect them to succeed, and they've far surpassed anything that we even thought before the year, even as like hopeless homers essentially for the Royals before the season started. We didn't even want to pick the overs on the win totals because we thought they were too high,
Yeah.
and they far exceeded that and made the playoffs and now have won a playoff game. So this is, everything is bonus time now, right? Uh,
Yes.
well, we got, a great pitching performance from Cole Reagans. We got Bobby Witt driving in a run, which was the game winner in his first playoff games. Same for Reagans. So, these are, great things that are hopefully building a longer term, winning tradition in Kansas City rather than just a one flash in the pan kind of thing. Is that what you're hoping for also, or
I
you
hope
think
so
this is the
too.
flash in the pan?
Um, I don't think it's necessarily a flash in the pan. I think they need, if they keep the same lineup as this year as last year, I think it was a flash in the pan, because I think they need
Mm.
some, I think they need some outfield help, especially. They need more bats. I think the rotation was really good this year. It might not be quite as good next year just because things go up and down. The bullpen started out bad, but actually turned out to be pretty good at the end of the season. So that was maybe average. But I think the lineup still needs a lot of tweaking. especially in the outfield. And I think the Royals need a probably a free agent. I guess at this point a free agent acquisition or some sort of trade to get a sort of impact outfielder. And I think that will help them move forward because I think this season was a bit of a fluke. But I think it was. I think they were overly bad last season. I think they probably were a team that was maybe a 65 to 70 win team last year, and this year maybe they were.
Easily, though. I mean, but it's the same thing that they dealt with this year,
Yeah,
right? With it's the decision making and the bullpen usage and the lineup constructions. It's like that's what's costing them games more than their play, though. And I think because I think they lost more games than they should have lost this year too.
yeah.
But
Well, it could be. I
so I
they
mean,
were.
I don't even necessarily think that they need to go out and get somebody. They just need to like not be so dumb when they make these game decisions. It's insanity, really. They
Yeah.
got
Well,
away with some stuff today, I
mhm.
think, because the lineup was a little better now that Pasquantino is back. Did you expect him to come back and then be in the starting lineup the first game back?
I didn't expect him to come back before like 3 days ago when they started saying that he was working his way back. And then I thought, oh, maybe he will be available for the playoffs. Um, so it was very recently that they were kind of hinting at Pasquantino coming back, and that was a surprise to me.
Well, when they first announced the injury, 5, 6 weeks ago, they said that he was out for the regular season with the potential of being back in the postseason then. But then they like it was very quiet for
Mhm.
every time I since then anyway. So they sort of like, made it put that thought in people's minds, I think that he could be back. And he actually was though. So that was like the early end of the window for the injury.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
but I mean typically, hand, wrist, oblique injuries usually have a lot of timing issues. So like
mhm.
for maybe like playing the field or getting around on swings to drive pitches, like maybe not um maybe what may not be like 100% like day one, it probably likely won't be very good necessarily. Where like the Royals have a history of trying to like rush people back from these types of injuries, and this seems like another time. You expect anything from Pasquantino
Well,
though in this, or do you think he's
he
more of
did
just
work
a
a
threat
walk.
for being there?
Yeah, he did work a walk today. He didn't get any hits, but the Royals only managed 5 hits altogether. So it wasn't like the rest of the lineup was hitting and he wasn't. So it's hard to say whether he was, out. It was just not a good. I think Burns had a lot of good stuff tonight
But
for this
he was the
afternoon.
All-Star game starter, wasn't he?
Yeah, yeah. So he
Over Seth Lugo,
Seth Lugo and Cole Reagans.
who was Lugo was like the supposed in the mix for the starting
Yeah,
role, and Reagan's was just as good really as Lugo was early in the year. So I guess we have three All-Star pitchers here pitching in the next between
yeah. So this is one of those years where
today and
the
tomorrow.
Royals have a dominant starting rotation, and this even going back to the Royals World Series years of 2014 15, it was the bullpen that was dominant. It wasn't the rotation; they were just kind of average, and you just wanted to make it get to the bullpen with a lead or close to a lead, and then you thought the bullpen would carry it home, and that's kind of. But now it's kind of the opposite, where
Yeah, it's definitely the opposite.
it's the although I think Urseg has really solidified the back end of the bullpen. Uh,
Yeah, but it's that middle part that's a little
uh-huh.
squishy, maybe.
Yeah, you want your maybe you started to go 6 or 7
Maybe.
innings now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but with the playoffs, you don't necessarily need five starters. You definitely don't need five starters.
Yeah,
So their, back end of the rotation should be available for, to eat innings if they need to.
yeah, like you could put Brady Singer in, like because it's going to be Walker starting game three, so it's going to be Singer and maybe
If
even
if necessary, game
if
three.
necessary, yeah, if maybe Lorenzen might come back. He was pretty good.
He is back.
Is he
He's
back?
Yeah, he pitched twice in the last week.
Okay.
But they were at short stints. Like he pitched like a 2 inning. stand and then came out of a game like with back, maybe it was a back injury or something.
Oh, okay.
But then he pitched like 2 innings the next to last day of the season behind Lugo, I think. Because Lugo, they gave like they just had him pitch 2 innings, I think, on the next to last game um, to put him at full rest for tomorrow's game too. But then yeah, Waka's going to start game 3 if they need it.
Yeah, so yeah, so it's looking I think it's looking good for the Royals. I think they're in a strong spot to take this series. They don't I
They have
think
two shots to win one game, so that's the best place to be in, right? After
yes,
one.
the Royals have never lost. I think there was an odd playoff system in 1981 where there was a strike and the Royals were like a half season champion and they played a weird series against the A's. But usually, I think they've never lost a series prior to the ALCS, other than that weird 1981 year. So it seems like they've every time since 2014 they made it all the way to the World Series. 2015 they made it all the way to the World Series and won. So they won the ALDS, they won the ALCS. So they never even so they this is a wild card series. So they won the only wild card game that they've played so far. And so this would mean so you would think and they so that ideally you would say the Royals it would be an unprecedented event for them to lose before they got to the American League Championship Series, so that they'd have to beat the Yankees in the ALDS, however, but
Yeah.
that might be a tall order. But um,
And I know they haven't done this 3 game series for long, but I think I've from what I've heard is that the winner of game 1 has like a very good chance of winning the series. It's pretty steep, I think, from what the record was.
yeah,
I was trying to find a quick stat somewhere, but I don't see because they've only done this for a short time, this 3 game series.
mm. Yeah, the Royals in 1981 they did play an ALDS and they lost 3 games to 0 in the AL 5 game ALDS. So that's the only ALDS they've ever lost was in 1981 to Oakland. Um, and the Royals made the playoffs that year with a record of 50 and 53. That they won, they clinched the AL West second half title that year. They actually finished 11 games back total, but they've won the first half against Oak. They were 12 games back in the first half and actually were 1 game ahead of Oakland in the second half. I don't, yeah, that was before our time. Um, of course. We were both 2 years old during most of that season,
Yes,
so we don't
right.
remember. Did you know that on August 10th, 1981, Cal Ripken Jr. made his major league debut for the Orioles in a game against the Royals? Speaking of Orioles Royals connections.
Yes. Nice.
Yeah, but yeah, the Royals are doing great. It seems like maybe they have a shot at even if they lost the next 2 games. I don't think we'd be too disappointed because the Royals were not expected to make the playoffs this year. I think the Orioles were expected to be a solid team. So it would be. I think if the Royals beat the Orioles, this is another probably disappointing season for Baltimore fans. Not only that, I guess they would have lost twice in a row to the Royals. If you call 2014 and 2024 twice in a row.
Yes.
But it would be another kind of season of heartbreak for Baltimore fans who haven't won. I guess they haven't won the World Series since 82, 83, something like that.
Yeah, somewhere there.
Um, Yeah, Baltimore beat Philadelphia in 1983 World Series, 4-1. So hopefully the Royals continue Baltimore's misery and make it to the next
Well,
round of the playoffs.
so there have been 16 three-game wild card series. 13 of them have ended 2-0.
Really?
So, yeah, it's
That,
ridiculously high odds that
those are good odds. And and
that
and
uh
that would
that they're
be
sweeps.
the road team wins those most of the time.
Well, I think these are all road teams, right? So, well, I mean, no.
It's
I
just the
mean, I
first
mean,
the team
all
that
the
wins the
games are
first
played at
game.
one site anyway. So,
Yeah, the team that wins the first. I guess either team could win the first game.
yeah, it doesn't matter which
It's
one's
just the
which.
team that
Then,
wins the first game.
well, it's not necessarily the first. Well, in 13 of the 16 times, whoever won the first game also won the second game, and then the series was over. Right.
Okay.
So, and those three series that ended up going to the third game. I don't know what I don't. This article doesn't show who won game one. I could probably find out, but it might take a minute.
Oh, I see. It says road teams enter 2024 with an 11-7 record in wild card series games, and they added that to that record with a 3-0 post start to the postseason Tuesday. So I guess there have been, yeah,
Yeah.
road team. So there have been 2022 was when the wild card series format was introduced. Home team has won one, two, 3 out of 8. It looks like. I guess there have only been 8 played.
Well, the 2020 season was a three
Uh,
game series also.
2020 had it as well.
So
Okay.
all of the games were three game series.
Oh, that makes sense.
That's why there's more.
That's why there are more. Okay.
Yeah.
It was the COVID year. Okay.
Yeah. Yes, that's why it's an oddity at least anyway.
So we're saying that the Royals have a
By
good chance.
winning game one,
By winning game
they've
one, it really puts them on the best foot forward.
hugely, yes, pushed the odds in their own favor. Right?
Yes.
Yeah. So what, game two is tomorrow afternoon, which will be in the past by the time that this is released, which isn't
Mhm.
great for this format.
Yes.
But so you're gonna make a bold prediction between now and when this is released on Thursday as to what the result will be of the series, Mike.
I think the Royals will win the series. I don't know if it'll be 2 games. I hope it's 2-0. I think going to that third game will be tougher to win game three I think game two will be easier to win with Lugo on the mound than it will be game three with Waka on the mound. Uh,
Agreed.
so
Don't put it to any chance. Just go take it, right?
let's take the second game. Yeah, and this was a game that was 1-0. So maybe if the Royals can actually score a few runs for Lugo, he can keep the Orioles lineup at bay as well. So maybe this could be a 5-1 type of games that the Royals would actually be a little bit more comfortable uh, and not have to sit on one of this by the skin of their teeth like today. So
Right. It was a tight game.
do you
One
think
nothing.
what
Or
are your
some.
predictions, Dr. Scaff?
I think it's gonna have to be a low scoring game for the Royals to win. 'Cause I don't think that they have any offense in them. So it's gonna have to be like a 3-2, 3-1 game sort of thing to for them to hang on. I'm gonna say that they don't win game two just because I want to be wrong, but every
Uh,
time it seems like anytime I make predictions that I tend to be wrong. So I'm gonna say they lost like 7-2, Mike.
uh-oh. Well, I'm usually wrong with these predictions too, so I picked them to win. So it's the
We've balanced each other out. We should have agreed that
yeah,
they were gonna lose. And then but they'll win in game three, something like that.
it's the irresistible force meets the immovable object in this.
Yes. There we go. Yeah.
Yeah, so well, moving on from the Royals and baseball, should we talk about this in our speaking of our bad predictions, should we talk about this past week's NFL action where our locks again went a collective 1-5. I was 0-3 again. I am currently, I think, 2-10 on
Two
my
and ten,
locks this
Mike.
year.
Minus eight
So,
hundred
so
dollars.
someone who went against me would be in a very, very good position. So you should just, I guess I am the broken clock because I've been right twice so far out of these, um, out of
Yeah,
these.
there
So
are 12
I,
hours,
I
and yeah.
I don't want to dwell on my losses this week, but I picked I picked all unders this week again because all unders worked very well last week. Unders only came through 6 out of 16 games total this week. There was a lot more scoring this past week. So I picked the under in the Cincinnati Carolina game that was over. I picked the under in the Detroit Lions Seattle game that was over, and I picked the under in the Washington Commanders Arizona Cardinals game, and that went well over as well. Mainly not because of the Cardinals, but only because of the that was my closest one. That was because the Commanders scored 42 to 12 or something, 42 to 10. Was that what the final score was? That was
Yeah,
that was my closest game. So
it
um
wasn't not pretty. Yeah, it's 40, 42-14.
42-14. So that was 56. I think that might have actually been the closest. It was still 5.5 points off. So I wasn't so great on
Yeah,
my
Cincinnati,
picks.
Carolina was 9.5 off, and the yeah, Seattle, Detroit was 20, 24 off.
Yeah, that was
Yeah, ouch. Yeah.
yeah. So
71 for that Detroit Seattle game.
mhm. You want to go through your
I
losses?
had two unders also, and I missed one of them. The Pittsburgh Indy game, I had under 39 and a half, and that ended up being well over that too. That was what was the final on that one?
27 to 25, I believe.
Yeah, in the 50s.
And that was because
And
Joe Flacco came in and scored points for you. Maybe if Flacco had stayed out of the game, Anthony Richardson had stayed in, maybe it would have stayed under for you.
yeah, but no, instead that happened. So but I did get one under correct. It's a Denver New York Jets game under 38 and a half, and that game had like no scoring. It was what, 19 points total. Was it
Well,
10-9?
under, yeah. The winning
So
quarterback,
that
Bo
would
Nix,
work.
had, I think, 60 yards passing that game. So,
Wow. And that's a good way to stay under is to only have 60 passing yards in the
yeah.
game. I did also miss my one spread pick. Uh, and that was the Buffalo plus 2.5 against Baltimore. Then Buffalo got destroyed by Baltimore. They ran a train basically through Buffalo's defense. Not close. Yeah, this was not our week, Mike. Everything seemed to be turned upside down from what we were expecting. I don't think we still don't have a handle on this NFL season, do
No,
we?
no. The big board, I was a little bit better on. I only lost, I think, $120 total. So I almost broke even this week. Even that I was decent on my spread picks and I was decent on my um, money line picks, but I was horrendous on the over unders this time. So I was 9 out of 16 on my spread and 11 out of 16 on over under. I mean on the money line, only 6 out of 16 on the over under. So that's where I lost my money this week. But I'm not. I think still will pick all unders this week because I think unders over the long haul of the season are going to be the way to go this NFL season. So I'm gonna do all unders again and maybe reevaluate if it doesn't work out again this week. But so that's a little preview for next week.
And then it also like takes any decision making away, so it's not you don't have to go through each game. It's faster this way then, right?
Yeah, and I thought about doing some overs, but I figured I would probably pick the games over that I would miss those that I would miss the overs as well as the unders. So at least if I stuck with under, I would get a few more right. I actually ended up getting one more right than you got with your uh, picking and choosing method. You only got 5 out of the over unders this past week.
I
So
sparingly picked overs. I only had four overs, but three of them were wrong. So if I
yeah,
would have just gone all unders, I would have gotten three more picks, I guess, right?
you would have gotten
No,
one
I just gotten
more
one more, yeah. But I
pick.
probably would have got, yeah. I still would have only gotten one, yeah. No, this was not my week. I had been up the first 3 weeks, I think, right? Or was I down just a little bit last week?
You
Maybe
were
I
up
was down
by
just a little bit last week.
you won
I was
like
down a
50.
little bit week 3.
You lost like $50 last week. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was up like $100 the first 2 weeks each, and then down $50 last week. This week was horrendous for me. My over-unders were awful. My spread picks were awful. I only got 6 of 16 there. I did okay on the money line, but that's not enough to make up for anything else. So I would have had to like ace the money line just to have a chance to be even. But I was down $1,300 this week, Mike. So that was an absolute disaster
That was a that was
for
a
my big board.
that was a
So I
micro.
was up, I was up on the season, and now I'm down $1,100 on the season.
Yeah, we're almost
So
even right now. I'm down 1,200. You're down 1,100. But I've had bad, it's basically one bad week. So maybe a couple good weeks will put us in the black again. So, you never know what's going to happen with the NFL season, but we will make our predictions in a few minutes for next week. But do you want to talk about the Chiefs uh, win over the Chargers? They won 17-10 over the Los Angeles Chargers in SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles. A win that perhaps came at a very great cost, however. Was this do you,
yeah.
was is this a Pyrrhic victory, as they say? Dr. Scaff perhaps losing Rashee Rice for the rest of the season. We still don't know what the extent of his injury is. Maybe by the time this airs on Thursday, we will know whether he tore his ACL or not, or whether he uh, maybe had a slightly less serious injury, or maybe even a more catastrophic injury, because so far the tests have been inconclusive and they haven't even been able to really get a good MRI on his knee. But what are your thoughts about the Chiefs game and about potentially missing Mr. Rice as a wide receiver option?
Well, it is a huge loss. I mean, he was their clear number one receiver going into this game, and it's just, oh, man, it was just crushing to see it happen. But then I'm sure it's even worse for the Chiefs because it was Mahomes was the one who actually made the hit that actually injured Rice. So that's
Yeah, the
can't
interception
make anyone
return.
feel
Yeah,
good. No. Yeah, after a bad pass that he had thrown that was picked off, and then Rice managed to actually knock the ball out,
and it seemed like the Chiefs
forcing a
recovered it,
fumble.
but it was a kind of obscure rule where the Chargers guy had touched the ball while he was out of bounds, so therefore it was out of bounds rather than, even though the Chiefs recovered it inbounds.
Yes. Is that the dumbest rule in the NFL, or is it just one of the dumbest rules in the NFL?
Yeah, I think if the Chargers had, I think just touching it out of bounds while you're out of bounds, I think maybe that should just be seen as an illegal touch, and be like a 5 yard penalty or something, rather than negate like the other team's recovery of it. Because if the ball goes out
No.
of bounds, okay, fine. But if it's just like a person who touches it is standing out of bounds while another team recovers it, I think that's not a
Well, because the other players are actually trying to do something, while the guy that's out of bounds is just trying to kill the play. Is all it is. It's not,
yeah.
but on a technicality, which is stupid. So, I mean, it's just the rule is dumb. We're not saying that the player is dumb. It's the rule of it is dumb.
Yeah, I think that's a more annoying rule than the touchback rule that the ball is fumbled into the end zone and out of the end zone. It's a touchback. I think
Yeah.
because people know that rule. I think this one is one that I don't think people necessarily know in the way that they knew that one. So I think this is
Yeah.
it's A, more a little bit more obscure, and B, I think a little dumber the way it works. And maybe just because
Yeah.
we're upset because it worked against the Chiefs this way, but
Yeah. If it was the Chiefs at the other side of it, protecting the ball, maybe
we
we
would have said
would
that was a
disagree.
clever move by
He knew what he was doing. He definitely knew what he was doing.
yeah.
But it works that way on kickoffs too, because like if it's a sideline like kickoff, player can just stand out of bounds and then reach back in and touch the ball. the minutes of the kick is out of bounds
Yeah,
when they
but
would hit the ball
yeah.
like further up the field than at
Mm.
the touchback line.
But usually they say catch the ball rather than just touch the ball while he's out of bounds.
Yeah.
They don't usually just try to like stay out of bounds and like bat at it or something. They try
They
to.
could though.
I guess they could.
You don't have to actually possess it for it to be out of bounds if you're on the sideline, right? So
I guess not.
yeah.
I don't know
But
how. I don't know if it works the
I think
same way in new
it's
kickoffs or
another
not.
I mean, it's not a good idea to do that, but
Yeah.
you could. In the same way that, like in theory, you could like catch a player who has caught a pass, walk them over to the sideline, and set them out of bounds, and then it would be considered not a catch because
Yes.
they never got their 2 feet in bounds. So
Yeah.
I mean, there are a lot of like kind of obscure, like dumb ways to like get around the way the rules are written. I think in the NFL. That's another example though of like how the NFL should actually look to Australian rules football to like pick some of their rule books because
Mm.
in Australian rules football like the players don't matter as to whether they're inbounds or not. It's only the ball that matters for catches for everything. It's like the players could be out of bounds. You could be running out of bounds, standing out of bounds, but holding the ball inbounds, and the ball is inbounds because the player is irrelevant.
I
So
don't.
the
I don't
so
know if
the
I'd go that
officials
far.
only so the officials only have to watch the ball. It takes so many of these weird decisions out of it because like the sideline officials can say like they're supposed to be looking at the ball and the player's feet at the same time. They can't make those decisions well. So if you're only having to look at one thing as an official and make it like a live on the fly decision, it's much easier if there's only one thing they have to pay attention to, ball only. It's a better way to officiate. It's a better way to write the rules. It makes more sense. It's easier to understand. They should think about doing these things, but they won't ever do it. They like
I
this
don't. I
complication. They
don't.
like this stuff.
I don't like the ball out of bounds. They have that in soccer too, that where it's the ball, where the person can be standing out of bounds as long as the ball is on touching the line. Like because they also have like if a ball is in the air though, it's hard to determine whether it's out of
But they're
bounds.
standing on the sideline,
But
so they
like
don't
if
have to
it's
do anything.
does the ball have to be completely across the line, or is it just? I think maybe with
So
technology.
write the rule, decide how they want to do it.
I
Yeah.
like this. I like the sideline catch, the tiptoeing method. I like that better than just kind of keeping the ball. I like the way it is now more. So
Yeah. But
I'm
if you're just talking about like what's cleaner to officiate, what's cleaner to like understand as a person watching the game, ball is just by itself is much easier than trying to watch all of these things at the same time.
but with replay now, I think it doesn't really matter as much. We can.
I don't want to replay every play. Like it's, you know, you shouldn't have to look at everything from 18 different angles and
I
watch it over and over again to decide the outcome of every single play. Like you should be able to make most of the decisions correctly. Almost all of the decisions should be made correctly without having to go to replay. And
I
now
still
they're getting to the point where you can't make any play without having to have it replayed because like there's nothing that can be interpreted correctly in live action.
I think it's just
Because
because
I
we have.
don't
I think it's not that nothing can be interpreted correctly. It's that we have such good replay technology now that we don't trust things to be interpreted correctly, and so that's why we have to look at everything.
well, it's because they're wrong all the time. Like I don't think the spot's right basically any of the time that the ball is spotted. Because the officials are
I think
always
it's
running from like a different angle. So they're like they don't know where
I
the
think the
ball
spot is
is.
often wrong too,
Yeah,
but
I think it's wrong way more than it's correct.
I
Way more.
I think it's somewhat consistent though. At least it's somewhat consistent. I think the spot is almost always consistently shorter than where they land, and I think except maybe at the goal line where they give it to them more often than when they don't get in, then I think don't give it when they do get in. Um, so I think it's I don't know. I don't mind the replay. I think it adds some drama to the sport. So I don't, and I also would prefer. I like the tiptoe on the sideline, and I like being able to like grab the ball as it's falling out of bounds. That's a much more it's a prettier
It is
uh
cool. It looks cool.
thing than oh the ball went out of bounds, but the guy's standing 3 feet inbounds, so it's a catch. The ball's inbounds, but the guy's standing out of bounds, so it's a catch. I
Or he's
don't.
running all the way down the sideline, never having a foot inbounds ever, but he's holding the ball in
Yeah,
inbounds, so it's fine.
yeah. That would take away a lot of like the cool Patrick Mahomes kind of diving pylon touchdowns and things like that. So there's nothing.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a lot to. I don't think there's any aesthetic benefit to the Australian rules version.
Have
Um,
you watched Australian rules football though?
Oh, it's fun to watch somewhat, but I don't think I don't think it's fun to watch because the out of bounds rules are different from
I think it's better from the officiating standpoint, at least. So there's less decisions that affect the game by the officials than in football, than our football, which basically I think in some capacity the officials are maybe end up being the second most important people on the field. What the team that won, the officials, and then the team that lost is the third.
well, I think in most cases the officials do get the things right, but they're very difficult. It's very difficult to call a lot of them, and I think every error becomes a glaring error when you can replay it and slow-mo it and things like that. So it's one of those things as well. I think with Major League Baseball, you thought, well, every you could say almost every ball and strike, you can see whether it's right or wrong instantly, but the umpire can't see that.
Yes.
So it makes him look like an idiot, even though usually he's calling it fairly consistently. But if he's,
So he's consistently an idiot, then that's what you're
yeah,
saying.
yeah,
Yeah.
he's like two,
Hopefully.
but he's calling it the same way for each side, at least you would hope. So
Yeah.
only that one, who was that one, the one guy who got that umpire perfect game in the World Series a few years ago, right? The
Yes.
he got every
Ooh.
call correct.
This is something that we've brought up a couple times, and I never remember his name.
2022 World Series umpire Pat Hoberg in Game
Hmm.
2 of the 2022 World Series.
Is he still an umpire though, Mike?
I would hope so.
I wanted to say that something. So I heard that he was no longer umpiring for some reason.
It says he still is an umpire.
Oh, okay.
Did you know he's only 38 years old?
Wow. Has he had any more perfect umpiring
Oh
games?
wait. In MLB has disciplined Hoberg following an investigation into Hoberg's violation of the league's gambling rules.
That was what it
He
was.
has not umpired any games in the 2024 season. So
Let's see.
we were both, I guess, right technically.
So,
Um,
so he's not been
Currently,
fired, but he's like not currently active.
he's been relegated to desk duty. He doesn't have his
Yeah.
badge and gun anymore.
I hope that's how they did it. Turn in your badge and gun.
Turn in your mask and chest protector
Chest protector, yeah, for sure.
or radar gun. Yeah, I guess because an umpire doesn't have a radar gun, but it would be his clicker. It'd be his mask and his clicker,
Yes.
his ball and strike counter.
It'd be funnier if they actually did carry guns. We just didn't know that.
Yeah,
Like
an ankle holster.
all this time they've been carrying, they've been packing, but we just didn't know.
Well, it wasn't, yeah, because of yeah, you never know if a crazed fan like in
Mhm.
is going to come on the
Then outside of game
field.
scenarios, they also like investigate baseball crimes.
Yeah,
Like, hopefully that's what it is. Like there's a whole other side of like the umpires' lives that we don't know about.
yeah.
They are like a police force.
I'd say they could be like small claims court judges.
They
They make
adjudicate
decisions. They make decisions all the time, so they gotta
minor complaints and
yeah. Like who gets like what parking space? Who was there first?
I hope that's what they do too, but
Yeah, people that cut in line, stuff like that. Minor interactions between different people.
that'd be
But
great.
back to the Chiefs. So Rasheed Rice may be out for significant time. We don't know yet how long. Probably, I'd say they thought ACL tear at first. So that seems to be the
That'd
median
be end of
of
season.
the injury possibilities. It could be even worse than an ACL tear. It could be better than an ACL tear. Could be maybe just a severe hyperextension and sort of twisting of ligaments rather than tearing of ligaments. But it also could be multiple ligaments and a meniscus and some other Nick Chubb style injury uh, as well. So we don't know what's going to happen. So it's Rice is going to be out at least a few weeks, probably the whole season. So he's going to be out, but we did have the return of Kareem Hunt to the fold, and he had a solid game. He had like 85 total yards, uh, and he was the leading rusher for the Chiefs. He broke off some decent-sized runs. It seemed like he got a few yards every time he carried the ball. Are do you think that so we were already missing Pacheco. Chiefs are already missing Hollywood Brown maybe for the rest of the season. Pacheco maybe for another 6 weeks probably.
Right.
Um, does the Kareem Hunt uh, acquisition make up for some of those losses, or is it just too little? Is it going to amount to much? Do you think?
I mean, I think it's going to end up being really important because it seems like, yeah, Carson Steele may have a fumbling problem. So he looked like he was going to be the lead back and then fumbled early in the game. And so then they immediately went to what this rotation of P. Ryan and Kareem Hunt, who did well though. So that's, I mean, it was a good sign. Hopefully they can stay healthy enough to at least get through a few more games. It does sound like Clyde Edwards-Helaire maybe working his way back. Did you hear about that too?
I've heard something about that, but
I think he's eligible to come off the the early IR, right? So he's
yeah,
could
right
come
now.
off this week, I believe.
Yeah, I think right now
But
though it's the receiver room that is in more desperate need because I think Hunt does solidify the running back rooms. So I think having Steele as your third running back and P. Ryan and Hunt as your first two is actually pretty good. And
yeah,
once you get Pacheco back, I think it's even better. But I
yeah.
think they're missing two receivers, with Brown being out for the whole season, basically, maybe eligible for the playoffs if he's healthy by then, and
Hmm.
likely Rashee Rice out for the whole season. The Chiefs might need another receiver from somewhere. Do they bring back, somebody like Kadarius Toney from the Browns practice squad, or do they make a trade for somebody like Devontae Adams, who's actually been made available, or Amari Cooper, who seems to be a little bit more likely, Deontay Johnson, a few other kinds of um, options out there, DeAndre Hopkins, maybe, some maybe good receivers on bad teams right now. Do you think the Chiefs will try to make a trade, or will they just go with in-house options, maybe bring up, Nico Remigio and Justin Ross from the practice squad, something like that?
Well, they did incorporate Justin Watson a little bit more
Hmm.
this week because he hadn't been playing too much the first couple weeks. So he did make a few catches in the last game,
Yeah.
so that was maybe a good
And
sign.
Juju Smith-Schuster had a role again. Maybe he's going to be brought back into it a little bit more. He's a little bit like a Rice or Kelsey kind of receiver who kind of just gets
Hmm.
open and maybe can do some things after the catch. Kelsey also had a bigger game, much bigger game than he had. So maybe that is another way of lessening the impact of a possible Rice loss.
And they did bring Fortson back too, so like they have more sort of pass
Hmm.
catching options. They're not necessarily receivers, but
Yeah.
uh
Fortson's back on the practice
in
squad. Yeah.
Hunt, I mean Kareem Hunt is known for catching passes out of the backfield, so that may be,
Mhm. He's better than
maybe they're planning on using
Pacheco
him
was.
more of a hybrid type player
Yeah.
than what they, had with Pacheco.
And
So,
P. Ryan is a good pass catching back as well. He had, I think, 50 something catches last year for Denver.
mm,
I would say both P. Ryan and Hunt are better at catching than either Steele or Pacheco out of the backfield. And if Edwards-Helaire is back, he's also a good backfield pass catcher.
yeah. I know you've mentioned this many times on our show in the past though that new wide receivers coming into Kansas City don't necessarily pick up the playbook super quickly. So if they
No.
do bring someone in, you would think that they'd be more likely to go to somebody that has a history with Mahomes and the Kansas City offense. So you'd think that maybe the Tony type would be somebody they could look to. Although I don't know if they would go back to him again
Yeah, I don't
after
know
what
either.
happened at the end of last season.
You have
So
Hardman as well. Maybe you would
mhm.
bring him back into it a
That
little bit.
seems like a no-brainer to bring back as long as he's available. I haven't heard, I guess, what
Well,
his
Hardman's on the
situation is.
team, but he's just all he's doing is returning
Oh
kick.
yeah, yeah, of course, yeah.
Um, but like Moore had a drop and an easy catch that turned into a third down incompletion.
Right.
So it seems like he is has not won the trust of the coaching staff or Mahomes. He's been on some returns with Hardman, but it seems like maybe again, sometimes Hardman can do really great things, but sometimes he doesn't seem like he's really in tune with what Mahomes wants to do either. So um, it's yeah. I've also heard rumors that maybe there's a Tyreek Hill trade coming through because I'm sure he's not very happy in Miami right now. But I don't know how the Chiefs would get him because they couldn't afford him. Uh,
No.
but that would be
Yeah,
I guess that
that's
would be
not
the dream
likely.
scenario if
Well, the
some
Devontae Adams one isn't likely either because that'd be isn't that because he's in Las Vegas, right?
Vegas,
So
yeah.
they're not going to do an in division trade during the
He's
season.
Devontae Adams wants to be traded, and I've heard that the Raiders will perhaps trade him for a second round pick. So
Yeah, but it won't. I mean, they won't trade him. Even if the Chiefs offered him a second round pick, they're not going to trade him in division unless they're the only team that offered a second round pick.
yeah, I think it's one of those things where the Chiefs. I guess the Raiders and Chiefs have done some trades before. Like Neil Farrell went to the Chiefs from the Raiders last year, but yeah, I think it's unlikely too. But I guess I would say it's more likely than a Tyreek Hill reunification this year.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, maybe not much. Maybe it's a
Nico Remigio would be far more likely than Tyreek Hill, would you say?
yeah. It's gonna maybe Nico Remigio is gonna play a little bit more, or Justin Ross, some of those practice squad guys, and
Yeah. Because
I would.
they have at least some history with Kansas City. They played in the preseason this
Mhm.
year, so they have like recent playbook knowledge to some extent. So you would think, right, that
Yeah,
they would be the most likely people to come up, at least for this week. Now maybe like week 8, 9, 10, somewhere in there, maybe we'll see some new people, but I don't know. I'd be pretty surprised. It's probably going to be a
I guess
internal
there's
fast offense.
still what is it, Hunter Renfro, the other Hunter Renfro out there maybe.
Is he
Uh,
still unsigned?
I think so. I don't think he
Oh,
was signed by anybody.
that seems
Um,
surprising. But here's a question I was wanted to ask you though about the Sky Moore drop though,
Free
Mike.
agent Renfro.
Still free agent. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the Sky Moore drop though, Mike. What percentage of Kansas City fans do you think either said or at least thought I could have made that catch?
80%. Something
Now,
like
how delusional do you think the Kansas City fan base is though? You think
that.
only 80%? I bet it was much higher. But also the Kansas City fan base is delusional. So
Yeah.
some extent.
Well, it was a fairly high pass, so maybe if you're Sky Moore's not the tallest. He's only about 5'10" probably.
Yeah.
So, but it was a fairly routine catch to make. It, so, but yeah,
Plus, the old adage was just about like if it hits both of your hands, then you should be able to pull it down, right?
yeah, I think maybe 80% of the Chiefs fan base's grandmothers could have made that catch, maybe is what maybe I'm trying to say.
Somewhere in that area. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it was probably closer to 100% of fans, not either said or thought
Hmm.
combined, right? Yes.
Yeah, I wouldn't have been able to be in that position because I wouldn't have been able to run fast enough to get to where I was supposed to be. If I had just been standing there and he threw it,
In a world, Mike, where you were standing right there,
I think maybe I could have caught if I was just standing right there. Although with a lot of help with your helmet and pads on, it's a little more difficult too. Like if I was just standing right there, and but also Mahomes probably throws it much faster than you think it's coming to you. So
yes.
I don't on a
So, like,
good
if I threw the pass to you,
I could catch it. If I
You
had
probably
like
caught it.
fancy wide receiver gloves that were like the sort of stickum kind of tackiness, uh,
Yes.
and I wasn't wearing a uniform, and there wasn't a guy running after me, I'd say I'd be able to catch that pass. But in a game situation, I wouldn't trust myself because I wouldn't have made it to the spot probably. It would have if I it was I wouldn't be far enough. It would have been probably 2 feet over my head at least at that point. Um, but maybe Mahomes would have adjusted and thrown a softer pass to me. And
Knowing you're the receiver, not
yeah,
an NFL receiver.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I probably would have been picked off and taken the other way for six.
Or you would have caught it and then you would have
Or
been
maybe I would have been left wide
destroyed.
open because nobody would have expected that I would be the target of that pass.
Right.
It would be stupid to cover me with one of your players, so they would just let me
Wasted
go.
coverage.
Yeah, yeah,
That's why we should have regular guys in random situations sometimes, don't you think?
yeah, yeah.
Or not.
Well, we're the regular guys in our betting situations, and we haven't been doing very well compared to the
Yikes.
Vegas experts. Maybe, but I don't know. I haven't looked at the experts online recently, but our locks of the week certainly haven't been very good. Do you want to try to pick next week anyway, despite our horrible locks? So we're moving on to week 5. This is the first week where there are actually teams that are having buys this week. So it's the first week where there aren't 16 full NFL games this weekend. There are 4 bye teams, so there are going to be 14 games to choose from. So our options at least are narrowed, and we can only so maybe having a narrowing of options will actually help us. Um, and so do, there are some interesting matchups coming up next week. Uh, I think probably the game we're most interested in will be New Orleans at Kansas City, where the Chiefs are favorites. I believe you made a bet in that one, Dr. Scaff.
Yeah, I am gonna take Kansas City at -5 as the home team on Monday night. So that's I like that. I think they'll be somewhere in that win by a touchdown sort of area where they were against the Chargers. So I'm gonna go with the Chiefs at -5. I don't know. I usually don't pick on the Chiefs games, but I kind of like this one. They seem
Hmm.
to be winning games. They win them relatively close, but not super close. I'm hoping for this one, but yeah, I'm gonna
You,
yeah take the Chiefs -5.
I mean, Clint Kubiak's offense has been cooling as of late. You don't think they'll keep it close against the Chiefs? I was trying to use as many of my Clint Kubiak Ks. The other
Yes.
KK offensive coordinator, Cliff Kingsbury, has been doing actually much better lately in his offensive coordinating than Clint Kubiak has, at least in the last couple of weeks. Um, I believe we'll come. We also have a Cliff Kingsbury bet going on right now for you, Dr. Scaff. Do you want to
That's
mention
right.
that? Should I mention my first bet first?
We can stick with mine, I guess. I don't know. It
Yeah,
doesn't
why
matter.
don't you go with you?
Because you
Maybe
want
we'll
to
do
stick with the
better. Maybe we'll do
K's.
better if we mention your three first, and then my three,
Ooh,
and then maybe that'll give us off the schneid, as they say.
yes. We'll mix it up. Maybe that will help us, yes, change our luck then too.
So you went with the comedy K, Cliff Kingsbury, uh,
Yeah,
led Washington Commanders, or I guess
that's right.
it's the Dan Quinn, which is also has a K sound, even though it's spelled with a Q. It's still
Right.
a K, um, beginning. So
Was that a
The
phoneme or something?
Quinn
Yes. Yeah.
Kingsbury experience.
Yes. So yeah. So I'm taking
Commanders.
Washington -3 against Cleveland. Cleveland has been playing very well. Uh, but yeah, the Washington Commanders have been playing great the last week. Were you shocked at their performance in week 4 then with was it Jaden Daniels and did they score 42 points in
22
the
to 14. They
game?
scored 38
Yeah.
or 39 against Cincinnati. So they've had a really they've averaged about 40 points the last 2 games. It seems like right now Jaden Daniels is becoming the CJ Stroud of this year. really dominating, maybe in a way that Stroud didn't even, on the ground as well as through the air. And we had talked about maybe Jaden Daniels being the quarterback that might impress us the most this season above Caleb Williams, although Williams hasn't been terrible, but he hasn't been Bryce Young bad, that's for sure. Uh,
There's
he's
no Bo Nix either, so
he's well, Bo Nix is winning games with passing under 100 yards a game, so
yeah.
um,
And not having nearly enough letters, so
no, not enough letters. Caleb Williams at least has enough letters, as does Jaden Daniels.
yes.
If his name were Jay Dan, he wouldn't have enough letters. He'd still have one
He
more
would
letter. He'd still have
still
one
have
more
more
letter
than
than Bo
Bo
Nix.
Nix. That's the way to look at this, I think, for
Yeah.
sure.
But yeah, it's been a great year for him and for the Commanders. Terry McLaurin's had a big season receiving the ball, and then even with Eckler going down, um, the running attack has been pretty good for the Commanders too. So um, yeah, they've had been really good on offense. I think maybe it's Kingsbury. He's a born coordinator, maybe better than a head coach. He wasn't a
That
great
seems
coach
for sure.
at Texas Tech. He wasn't a great head coach maybe at Arizona, although he did lead Arizona to the playoffs one year. But it seems like he's a really good offensive coordinator.
Yeah. It always had like problems like fading too, wasn't it? Didn't they like start out well and then
Yeah,
ended poorly,
yeah.
as Philly has tended to do with their coach as well, right?
With Sirianni, yeah.
Yeah, because he's sort of like had good starts and then not played well at the end, and
Well,
then
this
but
past year he didn't, but he's
this
also
season isn't it?
beleaguered by coordinators leaving and maybe teams not his team not trusting him fully, and he might be somebody I could see if the Eagles lost again to the Buccaneers this past weekend. If the Eagles maybe have a not so great start, they lose, they're go 2-5 or something like they lose the next 2 or 3 games. That could be I could see the beginning of the end for Sirianni and Philadelphia, who actually led the team to the Super Bowl only a couple of years ago. But you know,
Right.
he's not. I think he's kind of a jerk from what I've seen of him. So I think maybe he's that could be the I don't know. I could see him as being a kind of a sleeper coach on the hot seat this
Well, I
year.
think we kind of thought there was a chance he was going to get fired after last season, even,
Yeah,
which wasn't.
the way they faded last season.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that tends you kind of have to put that on the coach. It's hard not to put that on the coach if a team falls that far after having a great start. So that's not usually a
Yeah.
good sign. Yeah.
How about your third pick, Dr. Scaff, to continue our?
Third pick. Um, I'm not very necessarily super confident in this outcome of the game anyway, but you have Baltimore at Cincinnati. It has the highest of the over-under numbers for this week at 50.5. And I'm going to take the under on this one. I'm not expecting to see Baltimore being able to run through Cincinnati like they did Buffalo. So I'm going to expect a lower score total, at least from Baltimore. And I don't know that Cincinnati's going to score a lot of points against Baltimore. So I'm gonna take the under in that game, hoping it's going to be like in the low 20s or so for each team there.
Interesting. I think that could happen. Yeah, I think Baltimore's a running team. Maybe Cincinnati may be better at run defense than pass defense lately.
Yeah.
Cincinnati's been allowing a lot of points to be scored, but you think also Cincinnati is not they aren't a team that's afraid of Baltimore, that's for sure. So
Yeah.
they are familiar with Baltimore. I think that could go under. The 24-20 type of game wouldn't be surprising there. Either way, I don't know exactly which way I'd lean. Who's going to win? I think it's at Cincinnati. Cincinnati needs the win. Well,
Mhm.
the winner, even since if Cincinnati wins, both Baltimore and Cincinnati would each be 2-3, which would be surprising, I
Right.
think, to both of us. But with being 1-4 for Cincinnati, I think that puts them out of. And I think 2-3 for Baltimore. I think Baltimore can right the ship and be fine. But Cincinnati, I think, desperately needs to be 2-3 rather than 1-4.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. I think I'm feeling the desperation like Cincinnati because I'm 2-10 right now in my picks, and so I need even by getting all three of these right, I will only be 5-10 if I get all three of these right. So
Yeah.
picks better be they better be good. And so my first pick. I'm doing I'm going to do a spread pick, and that is I'm going back to the Rams as a home team underdog. They won the last time they were a home underdog with me. They actually won outright against San Francisco when they beat the 49ers 2 weeks ago. So I think the Rams. They're 3.5 point underdogs with Green Bay on the road now, and so Green Bay hasn't really shown that they can, win consistently. And I think being 3.5 points on the road, favorites against the Rams is a little bit high, even though the Rams are only 1-3 this year. So I like the Rams plus 3.5.
There's a worry that you actually picked the Rams plus 3.5 in week one. Although as an away team though against
Oh.
Detroit.
Well,
Uh,
that was a game I almost got. It went to overtime, and it just went the wrong.
yeah.
The way the ball bounced, it broke the wrong one because the Rams had a touchdown scored on them in the opening drive. So had it been a field
Right.
goal win, I would have won that game. So that 1/2 point, I like the Rams plus 3.5. So I could see the Rams losing, but by a field goal, I could tolerate it.
Yes. Yeah.
My next two games, though, are going to be over under matchups where I'm going to go unsurprisingly with the under. As I've mentioned, the last 2 weeks I've been all unders, and I think I'm going to go all unders again on my big board just because it takes the thought out of the game for me. And I think under is more likely to hit because than over. So just might as well go that way. My first under lock of the week is going to be Miami against New England, maybe the ugliest matchup of the week. Um, and especially with Miami not having their quarterback and New England having quarterback troubles with Brissett and of their own, and maybe they'll put Drake May in if Brissett goes down. So um, that is an over under of 35.5. It's at New England. Maybe it'll be a rainy, wet day. I don't know. But I hope it's a low scoring contest. Maybe it'll be a 17-10 type of game one way or the other, and that'll be comfortably under 35.5. Even though 35.5 is a very low number, I still think it can sneak under 35.5.
Well, and since Miami's Tua Tagovailoa has been injured, they've scored a total of 15 points in two games against Tennessee and uh, Seattle. So not the top tier of the league. So they're, not scoring a lot of points. That seems like, yeah, not crazy, Mike. It's a low under number, but it doesn't. I don't know how they could even get to that, even if they had like 9 or 10 quarters at this point.
Well, you never know what's going to happen. There might be some defensive scores here and there. Maybe that'll add to the
It's true. Could
few
happen.
safeties. But so I went with the opposite approach my last game, where I picked instead of picking a low under, I picked a high over under. And this was Arizona against San Francisco. Over under was 49.5. So the 49ers, I think, will win that game, but I think Arizona won't score that many points. And I think because of the absence um, of Christian McCaffrey still and maybe some of the other good players on the 49ers roster that they won't score a ton of points either. So I could see even if it's when they beat New England this past week, I think it was 30-13 was the game. That's only a 43 point total. So if something
Mhm.
similar happens to Arizona, San Francisco against Arizona, I'd be sitting pretty. So I think a score like that, maybe even like 28-10 or 30-14 or something like that will stay under the 49.5. Even if it's close, maybe San Francisco won't score that many. It'll be a 4-21 type of game or something. But I think San Francisco is going to win. I don't know what the spread is. Right, it's seven. Spread's only 7.5. I thought maybe it might be even higher than that. So
Yeah, because San Francisco was a 10-point favorite last week
yeah, but Arizona
against New
is a little
England.
better
So,
maybe than New England. But yeah, so
and like
I like the
Arizona
under.
has a few more like threats at least anyway. They have what the number one wide receiver.
Marvin Harrison
Uh,
Jr. and
so they
Kyler
from
Murray is a
from the
pretty good
last
player.
draft, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah. I mean they have at least some weapons, and yeah,
Hmm.
Kyler Murray can run, so that's always another threat at least anyway. But San Francisco's defense is really good, so that's you know that's a really really high over under number too. So
Yeah.
yeah, so we
Uh,
both went with very high unders,
yeah.
which is always means there's a lot more room for your better's adage about the it's always under
Until it's over.
until it's over. Yeah.
Yes. Any other games on the slate looking to be interesting for you? I think a game I know you shied away from this week because I shied away from it as well was Dallas at Pittsburgh on Sunday night. I think that's an interesting game. Uh,
I mean,
Pittsburgh's
it
been a,
isn't, but it is. But yeah,
Pittsburgh's been bad luck for you on betting usually, and you decided to shy away from them this week. Do you
yeah,
Pittsburgh's only favored by one, and I would go Pittsburgh in this one. They're only favored by 1.5. I think Pittsburgh at home is a good bet to beat Dallas, and of course the under in that game probably is also a good bet, seeing as Pittsburgh, even though they went over when you tried to bet under on them.
right.
So that's maybe the most interesting game that I see outside of the ones we mentioned that we're betting on. Oh, Buffalo Houston maybe is a good game too. That's a good game.
Yeah.
Forgot about
You
that one.
mean you're not looking forward to uh the division matchup, Raiders Broncos game? Is that not
Uh,
that's on the top of your list?
It's up there actually because of the Chiefs opponents. So and actually the Raiders
For,
and Broncos
for scouting purposes.
they're each 2-2. So the in theory, if the Chiefs lost to New Orleans, they'd only be one game ahead of the winner of Las Vegas and Denver. So it's behooves the Chiefs to kind of pay attention to that game. But
Yes.
I think it's not it's not the most attractive. It's also a 35.5 point over under, so it's seen as at least as bad offensively as Miami and New England is. I think that's a worse matchup than the Raiders, Denver, at least on paper. Like those are both 1-3 teams against. You have 2-2 teams going at it in at Denver.
One of the things we mentioned last week but didn't mention this week yet was the Denver New York Jets game with the Nathaniel Hackett revenge type game. Do you think Denver got the revenge on Nathaniel Hackett with their 10-9 victory last week, Mike?
Well, they showed that their offense is just as inept as it was with
It's
Nathaniel Hackett, but they
maybe
also
slightly
showed
better.
that New York's offense was bad with Hackett as well. So
Yeah,
they won the game, and Hackett's offense didn't score a lot of points. So I guess that's a win, but they didn't show that they were high powered because. So I don't know who won, but it was like in that I don't know who has the last laugh really, but I guess Denver did since they pulled the game out, but it was an
yeah,
ugly 10-9 victory.
yeah,
Speaking of ugly victories, should we take ours and end our episode?
yeah. Sure. Yes.
It's getting a bit about that time.
We're gonna
Uh,
end it with what did you say the Royals score is gonna be for game two
I'm
of the
gonna say
ball game?
5-2 Royals.
5-2 Royals win. I
Yeah.
said 7-2 Baltimore win. So just to be because I
Okay.
want to be wrong, I want to be very wrong, Mike.
Okay, let's hope that happens. So by the time this airs, we might even know the victor of the Royals Orioles series. At least if it's the Royals, we will know the victor. And game three, is it game three on Thursday? Are they playing 3 games in a row, 3 days in a row?
Yeah, it's first, second, third. Yeah, for the month of
Okay.
October.
So we'll find out that very soon before the weekend. So playoff baseball is in swing, and we right now it's we have the Padres up 1-0 on the Braves. We have the uh, Tigers
And
up
the
1-0 on Houston, and um, what's the other matchup? It was Milwaukee losing to the Mets 8-4. So Mets up 1-0 on Milwaukee. So we have those four wild card series going on, and then that will lead us into the weekend with the NFL action. And on Thursday night as well, we also have the Thursday night game, which we didn't really talk about, but maybe it's a divisional AFC South matchup between Tampa Bay and Atlanta. That could be interesting. Um, Tampa Bay on the road in Atlanta. We'll see how well the Baker Mayfield and the Buccaneers do in the Mercedes-Benz stadium. But do you have any predictions for that game before we sign off?
uh, I'm gonna say Baker Mayfield has another great game. We'll go with that.
I'll say Atlanta
And
at home.
Tampa wins.
I'll say
Yes.
Atlanta at home pulls it off just to be different. I don't know if that's gonna be my bet or not, but I'm gonna say it just on the air, just to be fun,
Sure.
just so we can one of us can get it right at least.
Yeah.
And so we'll see if one of us gets them right, or both of
It
us
ends
get them
up
right.
it ends up being a tie and we're both wrong.
Yeah,
That's how it's going right now, isn't it?
yeah, things aren't going so well for our locks of the week. Maybe this week they'll be better. Hopefully, if our viewers, if they're making bets this week, that their luck has been better, and maybe you're going the Costanza of Costanzing my picks, you'd be sitting pretty right now. Maybe you'd be ready for a little vacation somewhere with the your well-earned winnings. But we'll find out how we did next week, and we'll find out the results of all the baseball and football action by the time next week rolls around. And we hope that you enjoy that weekend. And we thank you for your patronage. And until next time, I am Dr. Michael Werman. He is Dr. Andrew Scaff. We are the Warning Track Power Hour. Please like and subscribe to our podcast or our YouTube channel. Our podcasts are available anywhere. Basically, you can find a podcast. It'll be on there, the Warning Track Power Hour, and our YouTube channels, of course, on youtube.com. And on that note, we'll end it there, and we will wish you a good day.